FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
But when I was done, a guy named Doug Steiger, who's the head of policy development for the Democratic side of the Senate, came up to me and said, Dan, I have the perfect back-of-the-napkin political story for you. And it comes down to this gentleman, a guy named Arthur Laffer. Anybody know who Arthur Laffer is? Anybody heard that name? Okay. My brother, be quiet. So what happened is Arthur Laffer, thank you, Carl, Arthur Laffer in 1974 was sitting in a bar, it's always in a bar, with two guys, and they were talking about economics. And on the back of a napkin, Arthur Laffer drew the following picture. He said, let me draw you something. And he drew an XY axis chart, and on the horizontal axis, he said, imagine that this is the percent tax rate that the US government charges from 0% to 100%. And on the vertical axis, we're going to represent the amount of money that the government actually collects from those taxes from zero money up to lots and lots and lots of money. Now, it stands to reason that if the government is charging 0% tax, it's going to collect zero revenue. But it also stands to reason, says Mr. Laffer, Dr. Laffer, if the government charges 100% tax, it's also going to collect zero money because no one will work. If the government's going to take 100% of your earnings, no one will work. So then he drew something that came to be known as the Laffer Curve that goes like this. And what he said is at some point, what actually happens is dropping the tax rate increases the amount of money that the government collects. And the two gentlemen that he was with were very intrigued by this napkin sketch, and they asked if they could keep it. And they took it back to their boss, who was then President Gerald Ford. And it turns out that those two guys that Arthur Laffer was sitting with are these two guys, both of whom were chiefs of staff of President Ford. Those two guys, of course, are these two guys. And who says a napkin sketch does not have influence and the ability to convey power? That napkin sketch, Laffer's sketch on the back of that napkin in that bar, became literally the basis of supply-side economics. It got passed from Ford onto the Reagan team and all the economic team, and the model became dropping the tax rate increases the amount of money that we collect. Now, there are lots and lots of interpretations of the Laffer curve. That's not the point. That was the interpretation that they drew from that particular picture, and that became economic policy essentially up until today.